let's get started. Oh, please never do that again. My name is Ayana and this is my channel. So I figured a really good way to get back into YouTube would be by doing a Q&A with you guys, because a lot of you had questions about vintage style and I got so many questions, you guys are wonderful, that I thought we should do like a two-part video. So this part is going to be how I kind of got started, because I kept getting that question a lot, and then I'll do another part kind of saying how you guys can get started. So I have all my questions down here on my iPad. Question number 1 from Frau von Welsh asks, how to get the confidence to wear vintage. Okay, so I got this question a lot, and I don't know if I would say I do have the confidence to wear vintage. But the best way to have confidence when you are wearing it is to just remember that this is what you want, this is what you love, this is what you enjoy, and you know you look good. So if you have all of that, and honestly, people may stare, people may make weird comments, but if you know you look good and you enjoy how you look, that's all that matters. Okay, so the next one is from Bulak Obo. How did you start? How did I start? I think what happened is I was watching videos by Lily Jarlson, who at the time of this video is no longer on YouTube, but she was a big vintage YouTuber. She's still on Instagram though. I'll leave her handle somewhere below. She had a really fantastic account where she would talk about all kinds of vintage style related things, vintage lifestyle related things. And in one of her videos, which was things from the past that I would bring back, she talked about how it's okay to pick the things from previous eras that you do like, while still having the freedom to live in the modern world and be at least legally free from a lot of societal constraints that we used to have in the past. So she talked about that, and one of the things she mentioned was the clothes. She said, you know, the clothes are just fantastic, just loving a certain era and wanting to wear those clothes and not feeling like you can. And it's like, but wait, you absolutely can. That's the point. You can wear whatever you want, and all you have to do is start. So I thought about that and I said, you know what? I'm gonna do it. And so I started wearing a weird mismatch of clothes. So I started wearing a weird mix. It was not cute. It was not cute when I first started. PSA, no one looks good when they first start. You have a weird, like a vintage modern kind of thing going on, and it looks like you're not really sure. Like you got into a fight with a time machine and lost. So it's okay. We all do it. It's fine. But how did I start? So I'm gonna touch more on that in the video about how to get started, but really you find an era that you like and that you think flatters you, and you kind of just do as much research about that time as possible and then mirror it as closely as you can. So that's how I started. I think my favorite era has got to be maybe the 40s and 50s. I love early 40s, early to mid 1940s, and late 50s, mid to late 50s, early 60s. I just think those eras are so gorgeous. Even the utilitarian 1940s looks, people still looked so sharp and so classy, even though they were wearing at the time would be just utility clothing, like just very functional utilitarian clothing, and they still looked so glamorous to me in a way that clothes now just don't do for you. So just in my opinion. And I said, you know, I want to be a part of that. I want to do that. And the great thing about being alive in the 21st century is that you can wear whatever you want. So I did. Okay, next up, Ms. Mockup asks, Tips for mixing and matching different styles and eras. I wish I knew. I'm terrible at mixing different styles and eras, I feel like. I know that if you do a sort of, I mean, it's easy to kind of do sweater tops with a more modern bottom. So some days I'll do that. I'll do regular just skinny jeans or whatever with, you know, a collared top and try to do that. But honestly, I am the worst at mixing different eras and times, and my mix and match looks like just whatever you threw on the floor and then put on. It's terrible. Like I'm not the person to ask. Madison01 asks how to make it affordable and accessible. Great question. So affordable is a very relative term, right? You know, what's affordable to one person isn't always affordable to another. But I would say the best way to do it is to kind of mix and match between your reproduction brands, true vintage, and then thrifted items that can be made to look vintage. It's really, I mean, it's a rare person that can just buy all from reproduction brands or just buy all true vintage, or is making their entire wardrobe, sewing it completely 100% me made. Although if you are one of those people, kudos to you, and can you teach me your ways? But most people are doing some combination of all of those things. So I would say that's the best way to get started, is go with what you know you can get. So, you know, I have stuff that's from Old Navy or Gap or J. Crew and stuff like that, and it looks vintage with my outfit because I'm just kind of making it work in that way. Just find brands that are affordable for you and then start thinking, how can this thing be made to look vintage? Don't think that you have to buy from the big vintage reproduction brands or go out and spend a fortune on eBay buying a genuine, you know, 1950s suit. Buy things that look vintage, that are really inexpensive, and find ways to make them sort of mirror the look that you want. Ooh, okay, so Lais Bacorni, I'm gonna butcher these names, guys, sorry, asks, were you always confident enough to go outside wearing vintage? I love your style, by the way. Thank you. No, I was not always confident. I've been wearing vintage style or vintage inspired style for maybe two and a half years now. And for the longest time, I would just wear it in my room. I wouldn't go out of the house. I would just put it on and just be like, yeah, I'm cute, I look great, and not leave the house. Because yeah, you look different from other people. You're not just wearing leggings and a sweater. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but people are not used to what's not usual. So I was really nervous about it, and also I thought, am I wearing this right? You know, do I look like a Halloween costume? No, I was not always confident, but the more you wear it, the more confident you'll start to feel. Okay, so this one is from Bloomsky14. Wants to know recommendations for vintage work clothes at a bakery or restaurant. I'd love to go full vintage, but don't want to ruin clothes with buttercream and batter. First of all, if you ever have any problems getting rid of buttercream and batter, send them my way. But okay, so a good tip that I got, and I think this was from Bianca, the closet historian, here on YouTube, and I'll link her information below. And she said one thing to do is to look at what people in your profession now would have worn in the era that you're interested in. So if you're thinking mid-century, you know, 1950s, what would a baker or a restaurant worker have worn during that time? You know, if you're a secretary, what it would, but you love the 1920s, what would secretaries in the 1920s have worn? So kind of look at it from that approach. But I would say some easy things to start with. If you like jeans, definitely jeans and maybe a more structured blouse or top is a great way to start. If you're into 1940s, 1950s, Just having a headscarf, head wrap, turban, whatever you want to call it, will definitely make your look more vintage. It's just such an iconic look that I think is not worn by the mainstream in today's world, that people immediately associate it with that time period. So that's a great place to start. You could also do very functional dresses, but it does take a while to figure out what dresses count as functional for you. So I would kind of caution against that. I would definitely start with separates and kind of work your way up from there. Okay, so next is a question from Burnley and Trowbridge, my favorite company for buying historical fabrics, thread, all that fun stuff. That's a whole separate video, but anyway. Do you buy new made and vintage or just new made? Great question. So I think when I say vintage style, what I mean is the look of a vintage era, not so much pure vintage, not so much buying actual clothes from a previous era. It's more about the look than having the clothes be authentic for me, for a lot of different reasons. But I do have some pieces that are true vintage and I love them, but I find that new made reproduction type clothing is just so much easier to take care of. You can just throw it in the wash and you don't have to think about it. You don't have to check for moth holes. You don't have to check for loose threads or anything like that when you first buy it. You don't have to worry about the color changing or anything. So most of my clothes are from reproduction brands, or they are custom made, bespoke, or I make them myself. So Catherine Marie Sews asked, where do you get your clothes and do you have a favorite year, era of fashion? What is your favorite vintage look? I think I kind of answered that one already. Definitely 1940s, 1950s, a little bit of early 60s Mad Men. But where do you get your clothes? I kind of touched on the whole reproduction versus true vintage thing, but like a list. I get them from everywhere. I don't have a particular brand that I have to get my clothes from, or that's it, nowhere but there. I do have a list of places that I like to shop on my blog. I will leave that link below in the description. But I mean, I don't really favorite brands. I would say maybe Collectif, Heart of Haute, and I mean, I'm very open to all kinds of brands. Like, I don't have a particular, they don't even have to be vintage reproduction brands. I really like J. Crew for their sweaters, cardigans, all that kind of stuff that definitely add a vintage touch to your outfit if you're trying to kind of pull it all together. But I don't really have one, you know, a specific group of brands. I'll try anything. So Mayfer Mitzim, MTZM, I'm so sorry, asks, how can you style vintage with a more contemporary look, and where do you find your vintage pieces? I'm assuming by that you mean true vintage. If so, I kind of already touched on the whole true vintage thing, but when I do buy vintage, true vintage pieces, I think I tend to go with Etsy or eBay. I don't like trying clothes on if I'm not ready to try them on, if that makes sense. So I don't like going to antique stores and thrift stores and stuff like that, because a lot of times, like, I'm just looking, or I'm looking for housewares or something, and I'm not ready to take all my clothes off, try this on, how does this feel, like, you know, so I would rather just kind of know what I'm getting ahead of time and not, yeah. Etsy or eBay. And how to style vintage with a more contemporary look. Again, I am terrible at the mix and match game, but I would say a graphic t-shirt tucked into high-waisted jeans, or a high-waisted skirt overall, something like that, is always a great place to start if you are going for that mid-century look. But I think who was it? I think it was Rachel Maxey. Again, I'll leave her information down below as well. She did a YouTube video on how to kind of do the modern with the vintage and do cross eras plus historical. Like she's great. I'll link her below. Museum Girl 6 says, pockets, and do I have to make alter everything? By pockets, I'm guessing you mean, do clothes have pockets? What do I do about pockets? Yeah, it turns out, like, you have the same problem. I don't know why. People think women don't want pockets. We want them. We want all the pockets. But I try to buy clothes that have pockets as much as possible, because they only don't make the pockets because we still buy it. If we just stopped buying clothes that did not have pockets, companies would have to start doing it. But I try to always buy stuff that has pockets, or sometimes if I really, really like something, I know I'm just breaking my own rule here. If I really, really like something, I'll buy it anyway and then sew pockets into it. Do I have to make alter everything? No, you absolutely don't have to make all of your clothes. That's not something everyone has the time to do. That's not something everyone has the inclination to do. But that is how you will get clothes that are exactly what you want every time. As far as altering clothes, yes. So much yes. Get very comfortable with the idea of having your clothes altered. Get very comfortable with finding a tailor, especially if you want to go more with true vintage. You're going to need them taken in. I mean, even with clothes, contemporary clothes off the rack at the mall, nothing fits most people perfectly. If you have that perfectly proportionate body that they're showing in size charts, that's fantastic. What is it like to be you? But for the rest of us, it's very hard to find something that fits you every single point of your body. So you're gonna have to get something done to it, get it hemmed, get it taken in, let out, all of these things. It is absolutely worth the money. Award 302 says, do you find you need vintage style foundation garments often? No, but they do help. I do have some reproduction foundation garments. I don't have any authentic vintage ones, but I do have some from the brand What Katie Did, and it really does help. Also, with some people who are asking about, like, how do you find the confidence, wearing the right foundation garments really makes you feel like, okay, this is it. This is my look. This is my vibe, you know. So I recommend them for that reason, but I don't think you need them unless you're wearing a lot of true vintage, because those clothes are cut to go over, you know, a girdle or a bullet bra or something like that. They are made for those foundation garments. But I mean, it's kind of up to you, personal preference. Echo Chamber asks, how did you start building the essentials? Don't do what I did. I bought lots of pretty dresses and I had nothing to wear, because pretty dresses are great, but they don't match a whole lot of other things you have. So, yeah. When I got a little smarter, what I started doing was buying things that are more versatile and would match lots of other things. Also, a cheat code with vintage is definitely accessories. If you have your hair and makeup and accessories like pins or scarves or things like that, it will make even a t-shirt and jeans automatically look a little bit more mid-century. You know what I mean? Next one is from Dr. Dre. How do you comfortably wear vintage to work, school, public places? So for that, I do kind of tailor it a little bit. Usually if I'm outside of my house, I do wear vintage style every single day if I'm in public. To work though, you have to really, you know, the workplace is such a unique environment, because Unlike school, where you think everyone's looking at you, but they're really not, at work, you will be judged by how you look. You will be judged by people's perception of you. That is going to affect your promotion. That is going to affect, how competent people think you are. And unfortunately, being too anything in the workplace can be seen as a detriment rather than a bonus sometimes. It depends on what kind of job you have, obviously. If you have more of a creative job, it kind of doesn't matter. But if you have a more corporate setting, for me, I just didn't want to risk it. So I would say that my clothes have more of a vintage touch rather than being full-on vintage. I definitely lean more towards 1960s. Because that, I feel like, is a lot more recognizable to us. It's just a basic straight pencil skirt suit cardigan, which is a lot easier to be misconstrued as, okay, you're just maybe a modest person in the 21st century, as opposed to, oh, you're definitely channeling like a 60s secretary or something. Inner Joan Holloway. I definitely tone it down a little bit more at work. If I was at school, though, I wouldn't care. You're never gonna see these people again. They don't pay you. Wear whatever you want. Okay, so May Noor says, where does one find the proper underwear for, say, the 50s or any 20th century look? There are specific brands that you can try. Again, I'll link my list of brands that I shop at down below, but it's the same thing with clothes. You don't have to specifically buy from reproduction brands. You can just find things that kind of mimic the look you're going for. So like if you're going for the 50s, you're definitely going to want like lacy grandma panties. Like that's just the thing they wore. That's why your grandma wears them. And there's still brands that make high-waisted panties, pointier bras, not hardcore bullet bras, but definitely pointier cups. They're kind of coming back in style, right? I feel like that's kind of on trend right now. So this is a great time to buy some things that are kind of in that vein and maybe won't be as expensive. Yeah, so I would say you could do true vintage, or yeah, you could find a reproduction brand that also does it really well if that makes you too nervous. Steph Teff asks, where do you buy your clothes? Are authentic vintage pieces expensive? They can be expensive, but they can also be really cheap. A lot of times you have people just kind of getting rid of their, mama's closet and after she passed away, and they don't know what it is. They just need to get rid of the stuff. They're giving it away for like $5. And then you have people who, will sell vintage clothing for a living, and they know exactly what they have. They know the brand. They know they can detail down the year. It runs the gamut, really. So, I mean, that kind of depends on you and your budget and what your financial constraints are. Where to find the right shoes from Funk Catherine. Shoes are hard. Shoes are so hard. But I would say it's the same thing as everything else. You can buy reproduction brand shoes. There's Memory shoes. There's American Duchess shoes. But you're really just looking for a specific look. You don't necessarily have to buy reproduction brand shoes. You're just going for a certain look. And so if you go shoe shopping and you have that idea in mind, like, oh, I want T-strap pumps, you can still find them at, a Macy's or something like that. It doesn't have to be that brand. Although I did buy a pair of American Duchess T-strap pumps, and I am super excited. Okay, getting down to the wire. From Persis Winter, what drew you to that era's fashion? This is such a nice question. I would say the 1940s, I think, is so overlooked as an era. I think whenever people think vintage, they immediately think 50s, rockabilly, big poodle skirts. But the 1940s, you guys, the 1940s. You could actually move in clothes. A-line skirts, I feel like now are so hard to find, or a skirt that just hits your knee is so hard to find. And I think it's just sort of a much more subtle femininity than the 1950s. The 1950s was definitely sort of like the Kool-Aid man of feminine clothing. Like, did you want to be girly? And I think the 1940s was more, you can be feminine, you can still let the world know that you are a woman, but you don't have to shout it from the rooftops. Everything doesn't need to have bows and ruffles and be big and frothy and cupcakey. And there's nothing wrong with things being big and frothy and cupcakey and covered with bows, but I do like a more subtle feel most of the time. And the 50s is gorgeous. Honestly, I'm still on the hunt for a really great 50s suit, because I think they're just so beautiful. And I don't know, I think it's an era that we haven't seen really come back since. I don't think we've seen those levels of sleek sophistication come back. I don't think we've seen it since. Yeah, so those two are my favorite. Love them both. Okay, and last one, Edie LeConte as hats. How to. I wish someone would tell me, because I would like to know. I desperately want to step up my hat game, and I don't know how. I need a coach. If anyone is watching this video and has not just where to get hats, that's not what I'm asking. Okay, I'm asking how to wear hats, how to be a hat girl, how to be a hat woman. How do you wear the hat and not have the hat wear you? I don't know. I genuinely don't know, and I need a guide. Someone help me. Thanks so much for everyone on Instagram for sending me questions. I had so much fun doing this, and I can't wait to do part 2 for how you can start wearing vintage style. I did get a lot more questions that were a little bit more in that vein, sort of people asking, what do I do? How do I do it? How do I get started? Where you get inspiration from? And I think those are going to be better for the next part of the video. So we will cover all of that then. Till then, thanks for watching if you made it this far. And you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Facebook. I am everywhere. But I think we have the most fun on Instagram. Instagram's like where the cool kids hang out, I feel like, right? Maybe? I don't know. Otherwise, I'm gonna see if maybe I can have bloopers or something rolling at the end, like right about Miss Mash? What? And those are all really inexpensive and big poodle skirts. All of, you enjoyed this, please give it a like, or yeah. So that's why those two are my favorite. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it, please consider giving it a like or subscribe to this channel. I definitely plan on making more. Hopefully we have some fun times over here just talking about vintage looks. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.